Welcome to WCPT 820's virtual labor panel with your hosts, Thom Hartmann, Joan Esposito, and Rick Unger. Tonight's broadcast is sponsored by SMART Local 265, Finishing Chicago, GWC Injury Lawyers, Powering Chicago, and Operating Engineers Local 399. Now, Thom Hartmann.
Hey, everybody. Great to be here with you and to be part of, moderating this extraordinary panel. We're going to be talking for the next 2 hours, give you just a very quick overview of what we're going to cover. In this first hour, we're going to get into the PRO Act and how this is called, basically for these 2 hours, we're referring to this as a labor panel. But it goes way beyond that. It's really about the future of America. It's about the future of the working class in this country. It's about the future of Chicago and Illinois. It's about the future of the whole damn country. And so anyhow, in the first hour here, we're going to talk about the PRO Act and and pensions. This whole is a whole extraordinary deep dive there that I think you're going to find absolutely fascinating. You're going to want to stay right here on WCPT and listen to this. And then in our second hour, we're going to get into the infrastructure bill that President Biden has proposed, and the Republicans are playing games with. We'll wait for the second hour for that. And also the future of electric vehicles. And in particular, one of our guests is very, we're all very enthusiastic about that. So we'll get into that. With us, joining us, and I'll just go through them right now real quickly. And then, as we start tossing out questions and things, give them an opportunity to perhaps introduce themselves a little more completely. Our John Daniel, the business manager at Smart Local 265 Sheet Metal Workers. John has been on these panels with me a few times. Lou Cairo, who's also a veteran of these panels, a senior partner at GWC Injury Lawyers. Mike Cook, first time with us on this. He's the service director over Painters District Council 14, Finishing Chicago. And Elbert Walters III is the director of Powering Chicago. And so we've got an absolutely extraordinary group of people here. And in terms of moderators, I'm joined by Joan Esposito, by my friends and colleagues. Let me add Joan Esposito and Rick Unger. And I'd like to give them each an opportunity to introduce themselves. The way that we're going to do this is I'll toss some questions out. They'll be tossing and we'll be talking, it's going to be formal and informal. So Joan, I'm guessing most people in Chicago know all about you. Your show follows mine. But also, we've got a somewhat larger audience here. So if you would like to let us know about Joan Esposito.
I am the afternoon host here at WCPT. I do indeed follow Thom Hartmann, and I am happy to do so Monday through Friday here on AM 820 and online at WCPT820.com. We do what Thom does. We talk about politics, we talk about issues, we talk about local, state, and national goings on. And we also do a segment called Union Strong, where at least a couple of our panelists have gotten sucked into my radio show, and we spent a half an hour talking about union issues and apprenticeships. And I am really happy to join this panel tonight. I will be with you for the first hour, and then I'm going to throw all my responsibility into the hands of the lovely and talented Rick Unger.
I don't get lovely very often, and I certainly don't get talented anymore.
Take it away, Rick.
Just as Joan follows Thom, I follow Joan with the Rick Unger Show on WCPT, which you can hear from 5 to 7 Mondays through Fridays. We are known to be rational radio. What does that mean? Well, that means that we will take points of view from time to time and certainly have guests on that may be contrary to a more traditional progressive outlook. We try to get the facts out there, and we try to have honest commentary on the facts when it comes to political discussion.
That's great. And thank you, Rick and Joan. And in fact, Rick has done fill-in for me on my show.
I have. It was
we go back literally a couple of decades.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That just means we're old, Thom.
I know. I try to avoid
that.
I know that. So the PRO Act, I mean, this is a big deal. This is, you know, in I think it was 1935, the National Labor Relations Act, the Wagner Act was passed, which not just, you know, legalized unions, but created a legal space in which corporations could no longer kill people who were trying to unionize, something that they had been enthusiastically doing for hundreds of years. You know, et cetera. This was then modified, shall we say, somewhat substantially in, as I recall, 1947 with Taft-Hartley, which basically said that individual states could opt out of many of the provisions of the Wagner Act or of the National Labor Relations Act and become so-called right-to-work states. I refer to it as right-to-work for less states. And pretty much every red state in the country has taken advantage of that, as have most of the purple states and even a couple of blue states. And it's gutting union membership in the United States. Unions are well demonstrated to be the main thing that holds together a working class, middle class, you know, thing. If you want to have your working class also be a middle class rather than, you know, simply a poverty-stricken working class. So if I can start with you, John Daniels, the manager at Smart Local 265 over at the Sheet Metal Workers. As a member of the union movement, we've got this new piece of legislation, the PRO Act, which is, from my read of it, from my, you know, what I'm getting out of this is that it's going to incrementally anyway push back on some of what Taft-Hartley has done. Can you give us your insight on this and your thoughts on the PRO Act?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And I'm really excited about doing the show with you. Got a pretty amazing team here today. The PRO Act. Is there an echo, or is that just me? I think
there is.
There's a little echo, and I'm guessing
we're getting it from the WCPT screen. But the PRO Act is way overdue. Everything you said, Tom, the intro, the undercutting of what I would say is the American dream, the fabric of social safety nets, the idea of a human resource component that ties workers to society, to an opportunity to increase and maintain a standard of living that offers dignity. President Biden is, I haven't heard a president in my lifetime, and I'm 48 years old, I haven't heard a president say the word union more times than I've heard President Biden use the word union, and just, it's just a breath of fresh air. Now, the opportunity to do some work here, and the PRO Act, I believe, is a great staple to start rebranding the American dream, to take an inclusive approach at offering all workers the ability to unionize, to have a voice in the workplace. And I believe that not only voice, but that diverse voice in the workplace is going to be a component that evolutionizes creativity with entrepreneurs, with businesses. It's been a missing piece that's been distracted or thrown in the garbage per se by profit driven corporations that have taken dignity out of their business plan for the past 30, 40 years. And in the world that we live in today, the chaos, the fear is not only driven by all the political nonsense that we hear, all of the untruths that have been painted across the country, but the fact that people are trying to find a way to survive and put food on the table and buy diapers and hopefully at some point have a way to secure retirement. And the PRO Act, in my estimation, everything I've read on it is going to once again create opportunity for the working class, for the middle class, for frankly the entire country to refine themselves where we were in the past and grow and create a stronger fabric than we've had in a long time, Tom.
Joan, let me toss it to you, and you could toss it to Lou, being a lawyer, his thoughts on this. But I'm curious, Joan, what you're hearing on your show and what you're hearing from folks in Chicago about the PRO Act, specifically and more generally about labor.
Tom, I always like to start with any discussion with like defining the terms. And for those people who are listening who don't know what the PRO Act is, the title is Protecting the Right to Organize Act, and it actually will put into law protections for employees and validating their right to organize, validating their right to collectively bargain, and offering some protections from just the kind of abuses Thom was talking about a minute ago. And I'm very lucky because my audience is always extremely pro-union, pro-labor, and I get a lot of feedback along those lines. The only other input that people offer when we're talking about unions, and Bert, maybe you can talk about this, is the idea of getting more minorities involved, particularly in positions of leadership. So that's before we finish up, I'd like Bert to kind of weigh in on that. But Lou is somebody that we have on all the time, and I know that it may seem odd for people tuning in who don't know all of the folks on this panel that we've included Lou, but Lou works very closely with unions and union membership. And maybe Lou, you can explain how you do that.
Well, our law firm is that I own is the largest personal injury and workers' compensation law firm in Illinois, and it was a very small little firm in 1981 when I started there as a law clerk. And over the course of 40 years, we've grown as large as we have, primarily, and I won't say exclusively, but primarily because of the relationships we built with the fine men you see on the screen right here, John and Bert and Mike Cook, and the various union representatives throughout the state of Illinois that we've done business with. And, you know, one good thing about unions, if you take good care of their people and you do well for them, they make sure that, you know, people come to you in the future. So we built the firm based upon unionism. And for me, it was a natural because my father, who was from Italy, was a union carpenter. First, he did road construction in the laborers union. Then he became a carpenter, and he started his own construction company as a general contractor. And growing up as a fast talking, smart mouth punk, my dad would tell me all the time, you better become a lawyer because that mouth of yours is going to get you in trouble and you're going to need to get yourself out of trouble. So he put me in karate when I was 10 years old and became a black belt. And then he put me through law school, and it's done me well. It's done my family well. But most importantly, we've built a tremendous relationship with the unions. And I can tell you from when I was a little kid, here my father was right off the boat from Italy, strong union man. And he was a contractor. He had, you know, it was one time he had almost 100 carpenters working for the company. He was fairly big back when, you know, when I'm 62. So I'm talking when I was a young kid. And my father was totally pro-union, always talked about the union. And you know, today, when I became a professional, I never talked to a contractor who has anything positive to say about the union. The only people that say have anything positive to say about the unions are the people, the brothers and the sisters who have devoted their lives to creating America, building America as we see it today, who made their livelihood in the union. And those are the people that have nothing but good things to say about unions. Everyone else, they say, oh, the pensions are too high, the health insurance is too much, they charge too much, that's why I pay so much for my house. And God forbid you get a car made in America with the unions, the UAW costs so much money. But, you know, people forget about the quality. People forget about the quality of the product and the quality of life that the unions have generated for this country. And Thom, your comment before, like the name of the show shouldn't be a labor panel, this should be the Future of America panel, because really the past of America has been built on people that have lost their lives building this country, many of whom did it through the unions to build these skyscrapers and bridges and roads and highways and buildings that have made America really what it is today. When, especially us here in Chicago, I look out the window and I see a plethora of high-rise buildings, and in the city of Chicago, you're building a union. And most of Illinois and most, you know, good industrial states, they want union labor because, yeah, it's going to cost a little more, no question. But you're getting a product. You know, when I get in my car, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I interrupted. I said it's reliable. You know.
Yeah, when I get in my car, I don't ask how cheap was it. I ask if I go 80 miles an hour, which I tend to do while, you know, not paying attention. Is it going to fall apart? Are my wheels going to fall off? Are the lug nuts all on well? I want my car well made, and nothing better than having your products made with good old American union labor, having your houses built with good old fashioned union labor, and you know, I've seen most of my career, I have seen nothing more than negativity about the unions, whether it was George Bush when he was bashing unions, whether it's the predecessor, I don't even like to say his last name, a carrot head. The negative things that they said about unions was unbelievable. It's just, and with our last president, I mean, all the buildings that were built union that he built, Trump Tower in Chicago, all union, the buildings in New York, and all he did is made his rhetoric, his political hot button is how terrible the unions were. They're going to ruin the country. They're going to bankrupt America. Yet he's got billions of dollars of union built companies. How do people live? How do people live, look in the mirror and not want to bash their head against the mirror that are like that? I don't understand it. I just wish that the unions could figure out how to portray that message to the public about all the good the union does. And I'll tell you, and I'll stop talking. I know more people, including John Daniels and Mike Cook, who their unions do fundraisers for charities. They do, somebody's little girl has spina bifida, something happens, they do golf outings to raise money. They're always doing stuff to try to help people. And I'm like, well, I didn't hear about it. Well, yeah, well, we did it. We sent the $12,000 to the little girls. We did it. And we sent that charity $25,000. I'm like, these are the things that America needs to hear. Because what are unions? Well, they're just a bunch of thugs, right? With big pensions who don't care about anybody but driving big black Cadillacs. That's the impression of the ignorant people in our society. And I say ignorant not in a condescending way. They just don't know. And I wish unions would be a little more braggadocious. I wish they would let the world know this is what we're doing to not only to build big, beautiful buildings and your air conditioning works and your electrical's fantastic and your bricks aren't falling off the building and your glass is secure, all the things that union labor does. But how about the things just making a difference, not for any benefit, not because they're getting a job, not because of anything other than doing the right thing. Make people, like you said before, create the middle class, give people a quality of life.
Lou, because I want to get to Bert and Mike, but just a very, very quick lawyer question in the context of the PRO Act. There is literally a multi-billion-dollar industry in America right now of breaking unions and preventing unionization. I think a lot of people, maybe for the first time, saw that at work in Alabama with the Amazon effort. Where these, and it's mostly law firms that are driving this. Are we going to see what does this mean for the legal profession? What does this mean for these union busting law firms, the PRO Act? I guess that's let you riff on that very quickly, please.
I mean, if the PRO Act when it's passed, God willing, I mean, one of the first things in there is it overrides basically the Janus decision. A year and a half, 2 years ago, Janus came out and said, if you're in certain public unions, you can say, I'm not paying union dues. I don't want to be a member of the union, but I want you, union official, you negotiate my fair wages, you negotiate my contract, give me health care, give me benefits, hear my grievances, but I'm not going to pay my dues. That's grossly unfair. That's like the opposite of what unions are all about, right? So one of the key provisions is it overrides the right to work laws to collect dues from workers who opt out of the union. So I think that's very, very significant. There's provisions in there for penalties for employer interference. It makes it illegal to interfere with unionization and organization. There's financial penalties for companies and for executives who violate workers' rights. So I think we need to have a little more teeth in the bite. And are there law firms that are going to start doing what the Seafarth Shaws and these big union busting law firms do on the other end? I don't know. Corporations have, as you say, billions with a B of dollars to devote to busting unions. It's hard to generate that amount of money on the other end of the spectrum to fight those big corporations. So I think we need to create a feeling in the hearts of America that unions are important, and we send them back to the Haymarket days when they were, what happened when they're, burning down factories and people dying because they locked them into a building. We need to create a movement in people's hearts. It can't just be in the courtroom, and it can't be in the legislative chambers of Congress.
Tom, if I can just chirp in here, I think to answer your question, I would say you're going to have more legal work than less for the reasons that Lewis pointed out. You'll now have another side, but also keep in mind, the PRO Act gives the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, teeth for the first time since it came into existence, it will have teeth. And that means there will be more actual battles fought at the NLRB and higher priced legal talent to do it.
No, that's a good thing. Bert Walters, tell us about Power in Chicago and your relation to and thoughts on unionization and the PRO Act.
Well, thank you, Tom. First, I would like to say thank you for having me, to all the esteemed guests, to Joan Esposito, a big fan, to Rick Unger, everyone that's here. Again, I'm amongst friends, so I really appreciate it, and I feel a little bit more comfortable than I typically would. But again, my name is Elbert Walters III, and I am the Executive Director for Power in Chicago. To give a little background, Power in Chicago is the electrical industry's labor management cooperative between the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers and the Electrical Contractors Association of the City of Chicago and Cook County, where we consistently invest in better construction, better careers, and better communities within that region. For me, my background started about 1999, entering into the union. I didn't know much about it, never heard about it, didn't know anything except one of my family members was a union. And before we got together, just to give a little bit of backdrop, and I'll try to be as quick as possible, we ran the streets together. And he ended up getting into a little situation where his life was threatened. And, as my family was really close and religious, we prayed for him and hoped that he got better. We all went our separate ways. Long story short, I saw him again, and back in those days, he had a vehicle that was highly dressed up. It had the big rims, fancy color, and I thought, like, what are you doing? Please don't tell me you're back out there in the streets. And long story short, he said, no, man, I'm a third-year apprentice as an electrician. And I was like, wait, what? Here I am, I'm working 2 jobs, right? Trying to take care of my family. And I just had 1 daughter at the time. And here, he's driving around fancy cars, doing his thing. And I show me where to sign up. And so immediately I signed up and I got into the program, and I've never looked back from there, right? Advancing through the ranks to serve as a business representative, going through the ranks from apprentice to a journeyman to a foreman. And so I understand what it is to be involved in a union from a perspective of not really having the familial connection, right? But as the director of Power in Chicago, I understand that, we wholeheartedly support our union partner, which is the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, in their efforts to organize, because that was the basis of it being started by Henry Miller. Matter of fact, I was talking to a gentleman this morning, and we were talking about Henry Miller and organizing and the fact that he never worked a union job in his life. However, he was the founder of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and he's credited with that, right? And so in our electrical contractor partners, they actually take part and they support this as well, because we would like to see all of the work done in this area done by union trained and skilled electrical workers.
Yeah.
Bert, if I could just jump in real quick, if you want to expand, when I was an anchor out at KCRA in Sacramento, the television talent was represented by IBEW. So, if you want to expand into representing news anchors and reporters, there is precedent for that. And you and I can talk later, and maybe we can get something done there.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to talk later. I would actually enjoy that, because I was a big fan. So, anytime I can spend alone would be great.
Take it easy, Bert.
Yeah, Bert.
But to go back and answer the question, yes, we represent a lot of different industries. Again, my familiarity is typically with the building trades, because that's what I came up in. And so I have a little bit more knowledge and expertise in that area. But in this position as director, I've been offered the opportunity to actually touch a lot of different facets as far as what we represent in the union industry. So I would love to have that conversation.
And the PRO Act will help you guys?
Well, again, I think for our particular industry, the PRO Act will definitely help, the union portion, the union partner that we have. Again, our contractor partners support them 100%. And I think that it will help 100%.
Yeah, it certainly will stabilize things. I notice we're hitting the bottom of the hour, and I'm not sure if I'm supposed to call for breaks, or if the music's going to start, or if we should just keep on going.
Rick and I could sing a little ditty if that makes it a
That
little
would end this.
Listen, you guys aren't cutting me out of this.
That.
You're not going to cut me out of this. So I know
You want to sing with us?
That's Mike Cook, right?
Yeah. I know we're running short on this topic in time, so allow me to introduce myself.
Finished in Chicago.
Yes, my name is Michael Cook. I'm with Painters District Council 14, also finishing Chicago. My new position of service director started April 1st, but I have been a 16-year business representative for Glazers Local Union 27, which is where I cut my teeth in this great organization. So that being said, yeah, the PRO Act is definitely something, that's been a long time coming, since the initial Labor Relations Board of 1935. This is a big act, and I do hope it comes to fruition. And I'll just bring one point to light. Obviously, as we touched base earlier, and following up, of course, with Lou Cairo, who stole all my thunder. Thank you very much, Lou. But I will just briefly talk about the right to work laws. I mean, just that term in itself just radiated terrible tones throughout, the past decade as to, what that really means. So to the general public, right to work, well, that's all fine and good. That means I can work anywhere. But it just literally gutted.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago traffic update.
I think we hit the break, Mike.
Good afternoon. Here's a check of the area roadways.
Thanks,
in Buffalo
guys.
Grove, Prairie Road northbound, all lanes are down between
No, go ahead, Mike.
Kissick into Route 22, all due to fallen power cables in the area. On the area's expressways, you're in pretty decent shape. On the outbound side of the Edens, inbound, watch out for a crash on the right shoulder at Glenview. It's going to be 45 minutes inbound Lake Cook into the Kennedy Junction. Kennedy out to the airport's an hour and 5, back in at 55. If you're on the Eisenhower out to 390 from the post office, make that an hour and 15, back in at around an hour and 3. Stevenson heading out to 355 from the drive. That's going to be an hour and 10, back in at 45. If you're on the Dan Ryan Expressway going out to 95th from downtown, that's a 45-minute travel time, 40 on your inbound side. That's traffic. I'm Dan Levy.
I'm Tony Goldwyn. 20 years ago, when my mom had lung cancer, she didn't have many choices. But today you do. If you've been diagnosed with lung cancer, please visit standuptocancer.org/lung cancer to learn more.
When the forgotten poor are in need of healing, they wait for a ship unlike any other. Mercy Ships, a floating hospital staffed by volunteers, heroes of mercy who donate their time to save lives.
Every human has the right to have a place at the table of the human race.
If you could just see the smiles that you get when lives have been changed, then it would make it all worth it.
To learn more about Heroes of Mercy, go to mercyships.org.
Did you know that most adults with autism are unemployed, and a major hurdle is the lack of job opportunities? That's why Autism Speaks is teaming up with Lee Container, the J. Donald and Laurel Lee Family Foundation Fund, and Delivering Jobs to create a more inclusive workforce in the U.S. Are you an HR professional, community leader, or business owner? Join us in creating a workforce where people of all abilities can contribute and thrive. To learn more, visit autismspeaks.org/employment.
Furnished by the Entertainment Industry Foundation.
Well, the cancellation of the 3rd annual Buffalo Grove Pride Parade has not stopped BG Pride and the Pinta family from celebrating Pride Month in the Buffalo Grove area. Mark your calendars for Sunday, June 6th, beginning at 12 noon for the Buffalo Grove Pride Drive. More than 100 homes and businesses in Buffalo Grove will be decorated by homeowners and participating organizations to celebrate Pride Month. More than 70 local businesses and organizations have come forward to sponsor this year's event. There will be more to see and do than you can possibly imagine, and everything is geared toward the entire family. People from all over Chicagoland can drive or walk by safely to view these beautifully decorated homes. There'll be safe giveaways, activities, music, and drag queens as you drive and walk by wearing masks. Visit the Buffalo Grove Pride Drive website, pintaprideproject.com, for a list of homes along with a map to be used to navigate and find the family-friendly Pride homes, businesses, and even schools. There'll be amazing decor from Balloons by Tommy, a favorite of the Chicago Pride Parade. Mark your calendar for Buffalo Grove Pride Drive, Sunday, June 6th. For more information, visit pintaprideproject.com.
You're listening to WCPT 820, because facts matter.
Welcome back to WCPT 820's Virtual Labor Panel, sponsored by SMART Local 265, Finishing Chicago, GWC Injury Lawyers, Powering Chicago, and Operating Engineers Local 399.
So welcome back, Mike. You were as you were so rudely interrupted. My apologies.
That's okay.
You want to finish your thought there?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Mike Cook, by the way, is Mike Cook is the service director with Painters District Council 14 of Finishing Chicago.
Yes, I do. And thank you, Tom. So yes, with the legislation, the right to work laws were, if I'm not mistaken, we were one state away from that being a federal notion. And here in Illinois, we're surrounded by, several states that have just adopted the right to work. So in Illinois, that played a big role during the Rauner administration, because he was systematically going around to municipalities trying to get that passed in those municipalities, and they did. Coming from the painter standpoint, if you just look at what happens with that language, that basically guts responsible bidder ordinances and responsible bidder languages, and opens the floodgates to having somebody come into your town to and the painters in the corrosion aspect, painting water towers, things like that, to have a company that really doesn't have all the right certifications, the right knowledge, all the latest safety training that's adopted with responsible bidder language. So obviously, this is a huge thing that all coincides together with the PRO Act, and I'm excited that this thing will come through, with great speed and do a lot of good for our unions.
Yeah, I think it's solid stuff, and important stuff. The Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation, PBGC, is something that probably most people have no clue even what it is, and yet it affects the lives of literally millions of Americans. And I'm not sure where to go first. Does anybody want to jump in here on talking about about how our pensions have been basically looted, particularly since the Reagan era, when they introduced changes, accounting changes. And my understanding is it used to be pre-Reagan that corporations had to book pensions as a liability on their books. In other words, they had to say, this is money that we owe. We owe it to our workers. We set it aside for them. We took it out of their paychecks. We owe it. And then during the Reagan era, they changed that to say, this is money that we own. We may have some obligation, some contracts, but it's our money. And then you had all these mergers and acquisitions where companies would buy companies and they would just simply take the money out of the pension funds and drain them, and then bankrupt the company. And I recall that happening to Eastern and a bunch of airlines, and then it spread across other industries. Who here wants to raise their hand on pensions?
Yeah, Tom, this is John Daniel. I'll jump in.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll tell a little story. Unions had a great idea, right? Create a voice for workers at the table, create a human resource strategy for the workforce that may be transient. This could be nurses, truck drivers, construction workers, clerks, anyone that may work in the same industry, but for a variety of different employers. They become a member of a multi-employer union. They move from employer to employer, but they're able to maintain healthcare and pension benefits that are housed in the trust funds of their pension. So really the idea of organized labor was not only to create safer working conditions, a voice in the workplace, collectively bargain as a unit, which the PRO Act is going to give organized labor in the middle class a better chance than we've had for a long time. But it created a human resource piece to create sustainability for the American dream. So to give you an idea, I'll tell a little pension story. So let's say Thom Hartmann joined a union when he was 25 years old. Thom was obviously very talented, so he worked pretty steady for a few different employers, and they belonged to a multi-employer pension fund. Let's say Thom worked until he was 65 years old, contributing 40 years into a pension fund. Thom could expect, and this is just a rough number, around $5,000 a month. That's if he doesn't take a survivor benefit, and there's a bunch of moving pieces. But let's just say in a 40-year career of making regular contributions to his multi-employer pension fund, he earned a benefit of $5,000 a month. Let's imagine Tom's now retired, living in, I don't know, Arizona, Florida. I don't know where you'd like to go, Tom. Maybe you stay in Northern California. I'm not sure. But you're collecting your pension, a pension that you've worked 40 years and contributed to for your entire career. One day, Tom's out on the porch sipping his favorite drink. He gets a notification in the mail that tells him that his pension fund has gone insolvent. And the PBGC, the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corp, the insurance company that's federally mandated to backstop the potential of a pension fund failing is going to protect Thom. They're going to protect Thom and his family, and they're going to offer him, Thom 70 to 80% reduction in his current $5,000 that he's receiving. So the impact to Thom and his family as he sips maybe Tito's at one point, maybe he switched to a Wells vodka. I don't know what you drink, Thom, but that impacts you directly.
We're going to Boone's Farm here, I think.
That's the point.
Mad Dog.
And by the way, John, let me just interject. I am a union member, SAG-AFTRA, and have been for years. But you're telling the story of my three brothers. I'm the oldest of four boys, and the brother who's 2 years younger than me worked for the state for 40 years and is now retired and has a pension. The brother two away from me, 5 years younger than me, was in the IBEW for 30 years and retired and early, actually. And my youngest brother, who is I think he just turned 60. He just retired, and he's got 40 years in the printers union. And all three of them had at various times in their lives, participated in the management of their local unions. So, I mean, this is, we all grew up in Lansing, Michigan. This is the Midwestern story, and it really needs to be the American story. I mean,
Thom, I would throw into your excellent explanation as to how this happened. There is something else, and it's what I call actuary disease. Because what happened was these large pension holders, these big companies, they would hire actuaries that would give them projections saying, you're going to make so much money by investing this money in the pension fund that you can really put in less of your own money. You're going to have enough to cover the pension benefit. Well, we've all lived through more than one crashes in the market and other things that had a huge impact on those pension funds. What happens? Well, if you're a single corporation and you're running a defined benefit plan, which means you get a set amount every month when you retire, well, a lot of them just walked away from them. They just walked away from them. Where the real problem is now is in the multi-corporate companies, the ones that have banded together, especially if they have unions, to deal with all of them at the same time. They're the ones who are in exceedingly big trouble today. And the Pension Benefit Corporation doesn't have the money. Remember, taxpayers, up until this latest piece of legislation that Biden got through in March, taxpayers don't pay for this. It's paid for by contributions from those who are allegedly insured by this government organization. Well, they don't contribute very much. And as a result of that, the guarantee company has been in trouble. So I'll tell you what, anybody who is getting a pension can thank Joe Biden. I truly mean that, because he has now boosted that fund with taxpayer dollars to where you still, if you've got a situation where your multi-employer group gets in trouble, you may not get 100% of your pension still, but you're going to do a whole lot better than you would have.
Yeah, Rick, to the dollar figure of 86 billion. I mean, it wasn't a drop in the bucket. I mean, it was a substantial amount of money that came out of this infrastructure stimulus bill.
Rick, I'm going to respectfully push back on a couple of your comments, but it's good radio. Really, the multi-employer pension crisis, it wasn't caused by pension funds. It wasn't caused by crazy actuarial assumptions. It wasn't caused by the members of the pension fund deciding to put more money in their pocket, take a lavish benefit. Not
members of the pension, the employers who were supposed to be putting the money in.
Okay, perfect. Well,
that's what I meant.
Then we're on the same page.
Oh, okay.
A lot of that.
Darn, now it's not good radio.
No, we're still going to get there. A lot of the factors, there's recessions. You talked about that. That happened. We had this 2008 housing crisis that was created by the financial sector. That destroyed multi-employer pension plans. We had industry deregulation of the trucking industry as an example. That was no causation, or the person like Tom's family his three brothers coming from Indiana that contributed for years. They had nothing to do with the housing crisis that failed.
right.
Anti-union legislation, right to work, the PRO Act is going to curb some of that, but certainly if you have less people contributing, if you have a strategy in the country that says we don't want unions and growing membership is what feeds multi-employer pension plans, you're going to underfund multi-employer pension funds.
Yeah, and just so I'm clear, John, that actually was the point I was making. If you're a pension benefit, if you're getting the benefit, you don't have a choice to have a crazy benefit because you don't set it up.
That's
it's
correct.
The employers. And the reason I put so much heat on these actuaries is because I know these employers. I mean, I ran a New York Stock Exchange company. I know some of the conversations that I sat in on, and they asked these actuaries to make these wild projections as to how much money the money in the pension fund is going to earn. Well, for every, however many dollars that they say, oh, you're going to be in great shape when you have to start paying out on this pension, that is money.
Rick, that was post-Reagan, right?
It was post-Reagan, absolutely.
Yeah, because pre-Reagan, companies did not have the ability to.
They didn't have that ability. That's exactly right. They had to make a contribution based on a percentage.
Because it was booked as a liability and not an asset. John, I want to clarify something. In your story about this fictitious Thom Hartmann, I'm retired with a $5,000 a month pension. Yeah. And the company that was, had set up the pension or whatever, goes bust or whatever, the PBGC, I can never get that right, steps in and says, okay, we're going to give you $1,000 a month instead of the 5,000. You're going to get 20%, 80% cut. But, hey, be grateful. Number one, am I understanding your math correctly? And number two, what that has happened in the last year, how does the I know that there was some effect for this in the stimulus, in the COVID stimulus that Joe Biden got in there, and what is that? What is the consequence of that, and what do the Democrats have up their sleeve to really clean this thing up?
All good questions. So the math is correct. I use a fictitious story. There's a lot of math behind it to come to the realization of a $5,000 weekly or monthly benefit, but that's using my local pension fund in a 40-year contribution. But the PPGC guarantees not more than $12,870 annually. So if you divide that out, it's just north of $1,000 a month. So your benefit would drop dramatically to that level. So some of the strategies that they got, and I want to hit something else because we got a lot of people in the audience that may not be part of a multi-employer pension plan, and their tax dollars are helping fund this PPGC and the pension plans that are critical. So Tom's in his backyard sipping Mad Dog 2020 or whatever you had back in your.
That's what we're down to now,
yeah. The quality of your liquor keeps going down.
But not only Tom, imagine if there were 1 million pensioners that was predicted to have that happen to. In 2021, the PPGC insured 34 million people. That's a lot of people. And where do those people go to retire? I talked about Arizona. I talked about.
Hang on a second, John. The PPGC insured 34 million people. That means that 34 million people got screwed by their corporate pensions?
No, that's like a total number of liability that they back.
Oh, so they're backstopping pensions to that too.
That's correct.
I see. Correct. Okay, thank you.
So it's not only devastating to Thom Hartmann, it's not only devastating to the potential 1 million current pensioners that are part of 3 large funds that are in critical and declining status that would have been impacted in likely 2025 when the PPGC was scheduled to fail if something wasn't done. The communities, whether or not you're part of a pension plan or not, if there's 1 million people retired that are used to getting $5,000, $4,000 a month, and you take 80% away from that, what does that do to the tax base? What does that do to the grocery stores in those communities? What does that do to a lot of the people go to red states to retire because the climate tends to be a little bit better. Maybe they've got a tax structure that encourages people to come there with their pension dollars. those same states have minimal social safety nets. How do they manage that withdrawal of 70 or 80% of income that was coming to the people in that community? So I just want everyone to see why what Mr. Biden did, our president, why it was so important, not to just the pensioners, not to just the fictitious Tom and his family, not to modify his quality of drinking, but it's a societal issue that had to be corrected. If they would have looked at correcting this 12 years ago, it would have been a fragment of the investment that it needed. They estimated $10 billion. If they would have taken action 12 years ago, instead of us throwing the billions of dollars that Biden needed to put at it, it was $10 billion 12 years ago to fix the problem that we're having today. How is it sustainable? Really, what's happened in this act is it's kicked the can, per se. It's pushed back its strategy is to keep funding of the PPGC. It's going to go 30 years out. So there's still going to be a problem that needs to be fixed, but temporarily it was imminent to fail at 2025. So we were 4 years away from failure. Now we've got 30 years to figure out how do we fund it. Some of the ways that they're going to fund it, premiums that we all pay as participants of a defined benefit plan. We pay an annual premium. Right now we pay $31 per participant per year to the PPGC as a premium. That's scheduled to increase now as part of this plan to $52. So that's going to go up over the next, I think by 2031, we're going to go up to $52. You may have heard the Grassley Act. Back in 2019, I think it was, what was it, Grassley, I can't think of the other partner in it, but Grassley had an idea, and it was an idea that came out from underneath the Trump administration on how to fund it, how do we fix it? And the way that they were going to fix it was no public dollars. This wasn't a public crisis. Certainly when banks fail, it's a public crisis. When insurance companies fail, it's a public crisis. When airlines fail, it's a public crisis. But when defined pensions, when a union organization that really protects people in a nonprofit environment on a daily basis, when that fails, you go find a way to fix it yourself. So the Grassley Alexander, thank you for that, Tom, in the audience. Their strategy was just tax the hell out of current plans. When I say tax the hell out of current plans, we currently pay $31 per member per year to the PPGC as an insurance premium. There was talks of increasing that premium to $300, $315, $320 per participant per fund to backstop the PPGC. Just to put those numbers into context, my national pension fund that I belong to, we have 144, just north of 144,000 participants in our national pension fund. Currently at $31 a head, we pay about $4.4 million in premiums to the PPGC to have that backstop for our membership. Now, we've done a lot of work at the National Pension Fund to make corrective actions to make sure that we have a solid path for pensioners in the future. And that's expensive. That takes dollars off the table and investing in yourself for a pension. If that Grassley Alexander Act would have passed and a premium, just say it went up to $300, we would have gone from $4.4 million a year to the PPGC to north of $43 million per year to the PPGC. That act in itself starts to underfund pensions and would have just created a falling effect of healthier plans and plans that have done the right thing when no one's looking and invested in themselves. It was a terrible plan. And I'm really happy that President Biden stepped up, worked closely with the Democrats and his group and came with a strategy. Paired with the PRO Act, I think we're setting the table for a really strong future for America.
If my thesis is right, that a lot of this crisis was brought about by changes in how corporations could mess with, basically, Ronald Reagan saying that Rick Unger could run his company in a way that messed with the pension. If that thesis is correct, why is nobody talking about undoing them? Putting firewalls around pensions?
Because it won't pass.
Yeah,
You're
Serious
absolutely
question.
right.
I
You're
don't know the
absolutely
answer.
right, Tom, but it'll never pass. That kind of legislation's not getting through now,
I mean,
but it should.
Tom, I know we're getting close to the bottom of the hour and I've been taking a lot of time, but some of the regulation that used to be in place, which is crazy, it used to be against the law for us to be more than 100% funded. So there were years prior to 90 where we've made contributions and we're required to make benefit improvements because if the federal government says you can't be more than 100% funded. So as we're trustees, and I just want to be clear that the trustees of a multi-employer pension fund are half labor, half the union leadership, and half management. They're the company. So it's a joint effort. It isn't management and these corporations are these naysayers. At the table, it's a true partnership to develop these pension plans and to manage them. But back prior to the 90s, we were looking at it saying, we're doing really good. And we traditionally took a very conservative assumption on our returns. And I know in corporate America, they're certainly not planning on a 7.25% return like we do in our local pension fund. We take a very conservative approach, making sure that we're paying the bills that we've promised. But they told us that you need to improve your benefit. You can't have a cushion. You can't have more money than you need to pay pensioners in the future until 2008 happens. All of a sudden the market flips upside down and everyone was doing what they had to do and they were regulated by the government to do the right thing. And now it's our fault.
And I wasn't doing a talk show back in the 80s, but my recollection is that the reason for those changes that kind of ring fenced that situation you're describing, John, was that there were some unions that were misappropriating their funds. And Jimmy Hoffa is the famous example, with the Sun Valley real estate deal. And that occasional outlier was used by the Republicans as the excuse to basically nail these things down in a way that makes it so difficult to survive difficult times. Does that make any sense, John?
100%. Yeah, they find in any business, in any culture, there's some outliers, right? There's some exceptions to the rules, and I believe the right-wing agenda, the anti-union agenda, the right to work strategy, the Koch family, all of those people, that round table, have picked the outliers in the unionized industry, put them on a billboard and said, you don't want to be part of this because they're going to screw you. And they've done, like Lou said in the first part of this hour, that we haven't done a good job marketing who we are. And we haven't, because I spend 95% of my day fighting to protect benefits for the working class and to create pension strategies, health and welfare strategies, and to try to organize and grow the union. And we do need to do a better job. Part of us being on this show is to help humanize who we are as an organization.
Well, John, if I can interrupt for a second, we did have one of our attendees. Well, they were in an exchange with Rick, but Bert Walters from Powering Chicago got you got kind of a shout out here. Mark Thomas wrote that Chicago IBEW NECA pension plan is far in excess of 100% funded, and it is in that position due to the cooperative work done by the joint trustees of labor and management. So Bert gets a shout out tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need to see more of that.
Final thoughts, Bert, as we hit this break. Bert Walters.
Well, again, I think that statement says it all. The fact that, and I think John was hitting on the point, when you have both partners at the table making decisions on what is best for the organization as a whole, then things will come out the way that it should, which is right. And so we have to make sure that we look at that. That's, again, thanks for the shout out.
Yeah, that's great. That is absolutely great. So we're hitting the top of the hour here. I'm assuming the station's going into a break.
Well, I'm going into a break, so I want to say
I'm not hearing the music.
It's been great being here. Thank you so
Joan.
much for inviting me. I'm going to go start getting ready for my show tomorrow. Tom, of course, has his cold. I'm the only one that's got to study up. So thanks so much, and I will see you guys all on Union Strong here on WCPT. Okay.
There you go. Thank you, Joan.
Thank
Joan
you.
Esposito on WCPT. That listen to all the time, all day, every day. So again, I don't know if Matt or Melissa can tell me if we're in a break or if we're supposed to be in a break. Okay, we're going to go to a break.
Here's the music.
There we go. It's about a minute after the top of the hour. We'll be right back after this.
Well, John Daniels, thank you for the John Daniels Show.
Hi, everybody. This is Santita Jackson.
good.
Join me on the
Sorry, Lou, I
Santita
got a
Jackson
little-
Show, Mondays
I'm a
through
little
Fridays,
passionate
6 to 8 a.m. morning drive on
Absolutely.
WCPT
That was
820,
great.
Chicago's Progressive Talk,
Good
where
education
facts
for me.
matter.
We didn't
AP
need some
News,
Sean.
on to McGuire in San Jose,
Hey,
California.
John,
So
can you
horrible
hear me?
tragedies
I got a question for you.
8 people have been shot to death.
How typical is it on the multi-employer plans to have representatives, if there is a union, from both union and management?
I believe it's required.
It is required?
It's part of ERISA, Taft-Hartley, it's all.
It is part of ERISA?
Yeah,
Okay.
we don't meet and talk. Every piece, our training centers, our welfare funds and our pension funds are all joint administered by equal number of labor and management. And that's a story I think the general public doesn't know either, that it's not us driving the narrative. It's not the employers driving the narrative. It's us sitting at the table figuring out what we need to do together to better the industry.
And when you're at that table, right, do you get the sense that management is doing everything they can to lower the amount of money they have to contribute?
I would say that I don't feel that way. I think we equally share in the reality that we don't want to price ourselves out of work.
With a procedural vote,
We want to make sure our health care is not necessarily a Cadillac plan, but a good, stable plan. Yeah, I don't, in my group anyway, and I don't believe it's unique. I think we have a real partnership and understand each other. We actually, we encourage participation of our employers in our welfare plan, in some of our strategies so that they have buy-in as well.
Well, it's interesting because the gentleman who had chatted in on this said exactly the same thing about his, and yet I have talked to so many union reps who are not happy with the way those things are set up. They feel like they go into these conversations and management brings in, this is why I was kind of on that actuarial rant. Management brings in these actuaries that make these promises that aren't going to be kept in the real world, and they kind of jam them down the union rep's throat.
No, Rick, sometimes, let me interject on that. Sometimes in the case of local plans, international plans, we have to speak for both. So locally, like our plan is in good shape and we deal with our trustees, our employer side. But then when I have to speak for my international plan, which is in the tank, that of course doesn't go over very well.
Interesting.
So there's always.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you why there's that distinction between the international plan that you said's doing poorly and the local one that's doing well.
It just so happens, like with us, I mean, we have a local pension and we also have an international pension. We don't ourselves, we don't put a lot of funds into that because we have no skin in the game. It's the trustees of the IUPAT that have, make all decisions. We don't have that. Locally, we control ours.
And like John, you raised a great point though, like how it's a 50-50 management labor. What do people say when you talk on the street to people and the pensions come up? Frickin' unions, man, they're ruining the country.
Yeah.
They're getting so much money in these pensions. Nobody says, hey, management sat down. There are just as many guys on the management side that agreed to that plan as there was on the labor side. It's like me as a trial lawyer, when people say, you trial lawyers, you're ruining the country, these multi-million-dollar verdicts for nothing. You guys are so greedy. I'm like, hey, mothers and fathers and accountants and bookkeepers and bakery workers sat on that jury. I didn't determine how much money my client would get. The judge didn't determine. A jury of their peers did. Why are you blaming the trial lawyers? Like, why are you blaming the union because the pensions are so favorable to the workers? And of course, the key is why are they underfunded? Why are they in trouble? It's not the injured worker who's getting his check. He's not the guy that caused it to be underfunded. He's not the guy that caused it to lose its investment money. But again, it's the rhetoric out there, the political hot buttons that people push is union, union, union. They always portray the negative stuff. And
I think we may be live again.
Hello.
Welcome back. So I think a lot of folks just got dropped into the middle of a conversation here, but it's a good one. And we're continuing this conversation about the pensions, but I would like to move along.
We're not back live.
Oh, we're not live.
We're not back live.
No, I just got to turn down a little bit.
But that was a great opening.
Your local store has more than 80 specialty tools available for your next repair.
We got another minute.
Refundable deposit required.
Okay, thanks, man.
Stop by O'Reilly Auto Parts and ask about our free loaner.
Matt, are you going to hit the break at the bottom of the hour, or should I? Are you waiting for me to call for it, or?
Yeah, go ahead and call for it around the bottom of the hour. It can float. No, so it's not
sudden disaster.
Okay, great.
You can't get to the
and then at the end of the hour, we got to be out at
of food.
59.50.
What would you do?
Thank you.
Well, I like that
wish you
first
had
hour. I
emergency
learned some
food to
stuff.
get you through the crisis.
Me too.
And that's why we're here. We're MyPatriotSupply.com, America's leading source of emergency food. Our food lasts for up to 25 years.
John, you're going to have to come on my show. You are an excellent spokesperson for unions.
Won't you join us? Unlike other food
Anytime, Rick.
we don't
really
skimp
are.
on
Thank you
calories.
for that. I appreciate it.
Our meals give you more than
You work
2,000
with,
calories
Talking
per
about.
day.
I've had a
Why?
few union
'Cause that's what
people
you
when
need
I'm trying to.
survive any challenging crisis.
Without going into my background,
now,
I had to be a
save
union guy. I'm
$50
from
on our
Youngstown,
popular
Ohio,
full
right?
emergency food kit.
And I worked in the
Go to
steel mills.
MyPatriotSupply.com
And I've had some
and
union
place
people
your
on.
order.
I'm just going,
We
no,
ship
you don't even know
fast,
what you're
2 to 3
talking about,
days
man.
max.
You're way better
Your
than
food
this.
arrives
you
discreetly
know?
right to your door.
There's a
Order
lot of
today
us
and
out
save
there
$50
that
at
it's
MyPatriotSupply.com.
serious, and
That's
we're dealing with people's lives.
MyPatriotSupply.com.
It was
Welcome back to
an
WCPT 820's
irreplaceable part
virtual
of
labor
my-
panel, sponsored by Smart Local 265, Finishing Chicago, GWC Injury Lawyers, Powering Chicago, and Operating Engineers Local 399.
And welcome back. Thom Hartmann and Rick Unger here with you. And on our panel, John Daniel, business manager with Smart Local 265 Sheet Metal Workers, Louis Cairo, senior partner with GWC Injury Lawyers, Mike Cook, service director with Painters District Council 14, Finishing Chicago, and Elbert Walters III, the director of Powering Chicago. And we've kind of wrapped up, I think, the conversation about pensions and the PRO Act. And I'd like to move to the infrastructure bill. This is a major piece of legislation. Started out over $2 trillion. The Biden administration put it forward along with Nancy Pelosi and said, okay, here we go, two point something trillion dollars, and it's going to start rebuilding America. I mean, basically, the 40 years of Reaganism that we have been living through has been a period of time where the federal government just pretty much stopped any sort of infrastructure work. Threw it at the states. A lot of the states are underwater. They're having so it's potholes everywhere and bridges falling down, and the rest of the world has world-class infrastructure, and ours is literally 40 years old because we've been living in 40 years of this insane Republican austerity. And now, to make things even weirder, we've got the Biden administration saying, yeah, we wanted a little over $2 trillion. The Republicans say, no way, we'll go for that. So the Democrats are now going, well, how about 1.7 trillion? And the Republicans are like, no, we want it to be 600 billion. And by the way, you got to take all that money out of the money you already appropriated for COVID that you haven't spent yet. Not one new penny in the taxes. And the Democrats are still negotiating with these people, or is this just all for show? What is going to be in the infrastructure bill? What is important about the infrastructure bill? How might it change America? Setting aside the political equation, I think if it's successful, it'll be a massive political equation. Mike Cook, as somebody who's, the Painters District Council, finished in Chicago, infrastructure, construction, you guys are in the middle of that, in the midst of that. What are your thoughts on number one, how this dance that these two parties have been doing, or if you don't want to get political, what are your thoughts on the infrastructure bill, the need for it, how it's being done, where it should go?
Well, just as a general thing, the dance is always going to be there on both sides, of course. Everybody wants what they want. But you know what? Yeah, roads are crumbling, bridges are, having issues, of course, with the painters. Corrosion protection is huge. Obviously, as you can imagine, that plays a significant role. And I know that my other building trades affiliates may thwart me if I say, yeah, we do need roads, we do need bridges, but we also need vertical. We need vertical construction. We need, we need new communities. We need, urban development to bring those new roads. You know, obviously fix what we have, but we need some more, and that's important to obviously in this bill. Is it part of it? And maybe it's just my my generalization of what I would like to see moving forward. But yeah, as a whole, I mean, we can't get hurt by it by any means. That's for sure.
And are there particular pieces of the infrastructure bill that you think that we should be paying more attention to, and particularly in any interactions that we have with any politicians we may have, in terms of advocating for or against doing any of this in any particular way? Mike?
No, I mean, I can't. I would think that everybody would be on board with this. I mean, it's a topic that radiates with all of us. The fact is that, let's face it, cars have been around. We're going to get into the electric vehicle stuff, but cars have been around for well over a century. These structures were built several decades ago, 50, 60, 70 years ago. Of course, when the Eisenhower interstate system came into play, I mean, you have to maintain this stuff. So, again, I really couldn't say one way or another as to how I feel what this bill would do. Again, it's a multifaceted bill.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of moving parts to this.
So Elbert Waters the third, Bert, you guys have to be in the midst of this, because a big piece of this is about electrifying America. Your thoughts on this infrastructure bill?
Well, of course, just like Mike alluded to, the political dance is not something that we particularly want to get into. Of course, we know that our infrastructure needs repair, and we should be doing everything we can to not only repair the infrastructure that we have, but I think parts of this bill is going towards making sure that we create new jobs, right? And looking at the technology that we have. Mike alluded to in his statement before too, about the vehicles that are emitting this poison into the air that's killing our atmosphere, having an adverse effect on us, as living creatures, right? Having some kind of sustainable, renewable energy system that we can use to transport our goods and services, to actually transport ourselves across, the interstates and highways and byways, is something that we really need to look at. And going back just a little bit, there hasn't been anything like this since Franklin Delano Roosevelt, right? The fact that we need to invest in one another and make sure that there are jobs that are created to help out not only those who are struggling, but again, I think there's pieces in this bill that look to make sure that it's for everyone. So for Powering Chicago and its partners, we're very excited about what this bill can do, especially on the electric side. But like I said, we'll get to that a little bit later.
Yeah, and with respect to all of you guys, my apologies. I'll dial back on the politics a little bit, because I realize that your unions all have people who have all parties and political persuasions, but it is mind-boggling to me to watch this dance. I'll just leave it at that. You all have heard my rants before.
I think Lewis has his hands up.
Yeah, Lou, go for it.
My clients, whether they're all Democrat or they're all Republican or they're mixed, I don't care. I don't get elected, and these gentlemen have to watch their words a little bit. I don't really have to quite so much. But the real question is, this is a political hot button. It's the Reds versus the blue. The Republicans don't want to spend the money. The Democrats are willing to spend the money. But why is this such a political thing? We're talking about safe roads that our children get on buses. We travel, but semis going across country moving cargo. We're talking about investing money in transit, in speedy trains, and in buses, clean air buses, and with the air industry. We're talking about safe drinking water, getting rid of all the lead pipe in America that kills little children. We're talking about safe drinking water. Why is that a political hot button? We're talking about bridges that, you have a bridge collapse and you could kill 100 people in an instant. We're talking about clean air energy. I mean, do we want to rely on coal, fossil fuel, gasoline, or do we want clean air? I mean, we're talking about housing. We're talking about manufacturing. What is the core? What was the core of building America? It's a manufacturing process. Where's that gone? It ain't in America, my friends. So the infrastructure bill is talking about putting $2.3 trillion with a T over 8 years. And all that money, what is that money going to be used for? We're not giving money to Israelis or the Palestinians or the Iraqis or Britain. We're giving money back into America. You take that $2.3 trillion, you put it into America. That money is used, the people that are going to use that money, it's to pay for the work they're going to do. So we're paying Americans to build America. At the end of the day, when you look back 8 years later and you say, wow, we just spent, $2.3 trillion. We've made better, safer roads, safer bridges, safer air, safer drinking for our children, clean air, this, that, manufacturing. We've created jobs and safety. All that $2.3 trillion, it's sitting in America. It's in our roads and our clean air and our education and the housing and the things that we're doing. So why is this a political hot button? Anything that seems good, if the Republicans could take credit for it, they would have done it. But because Biden's administration is proffering this, they're promoting this, the Republicans they're going to have a negative attitude toward it.
Well, really, there is a precedent here. When we came out of World War II, our debt to GDP ratio was 128%. We had a debt that was 128% of GDP, and we're approaching 100% right now if you don't include the debt that the government owes itself, like the Social Security Trust Fund. And so we're not that bad, but the way we got out of it, in large part, was Republican President Dwight Eisenhower saying, I'm going to borrow even more money, and I'm going to invest the hell out of this money. We are going to build roads across this country. We are going to build brand new schools. We are going to build hospitals. This was back when hospitals were nonprofit organizations, and most of them were run by counties. We're gonna build America, and he did that. And what happened was that all the money that was spent on the Eisenhower highway system and all these other pieces of Eisenhower's infrastructure that Kennedy continued and LBJ continued as well, all produced a return in terms of added tax revenue that was so great that it paid down the debt from World War II. So it's like, even the argument that we can't afford this is an insane argument, because the infrastructure is the soil in which business grows. It is, and so anyhow, end of rant. John, I see you grinning. You have some thoughts you want to toss into this, John?
Yeah, I just can't get my mind around even us talking on this little intimate setting that this is a controversial issue. I think infrastructure spending traditionally has been a bipartisan, one of the few bipartisan issues that our country is continually seeing over the years. The idea of expanding mass transit. I mean, our rail system, how old is our rail system?
There's been 1980s.
There's been a systematic attack on the rail industry for trying to go fully autonomous. You've got a mile-long train going down a 40, 50, 60-year-old track that they want nobody on it. We've been fighting at our international level. The union that I belong to, SMART, Sheet Metal Air Rail and Transportation, represents the transportation workers in the trains, and they're saying just one person on the train is fine, and it's ridiculous. But the infrastructure.
Wait a minute, you're saying a train with 100 cars, a massive amount of weight, a massive amount of power, moving 50, 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, and there's one human being responsible for that entire train? Is that what you're saying?
I'll tell you, some unique states around the country have blocked and they've mandated two-person crews. There's been a movement across the entire country to get rid of two-person. One person's enough, and in fact, we'd like to get to autonomous. And anything goes wrong, I mean, what? It's ludicrous.
Especially if that train is hauling something dangerous.
Yeah.
I know we live in the Midwest, and Elwood, Illinois is actually the largest interport transit. We got a lot of trains and a lot of boats and a lot of planes that come in here to transport cargo. And there's a lot of hazardous material that goes on. And these people are in our transportation side, they're in a high risk. We see people, I get emails weekly of someone else in a rail yard got crushed between two trains because of the immense amount of pressure that these rail carriers are putting on on the workforce. And that's just one of the fights that we collectively as organized labor fight against. You talk mass transit, you talk about high-speed internet to rural areas. How is that not a mutually beneficial growth model for the United States? How can not both red and blue, moderates, liberal, conservative, I don't care what you are, how can you not see that investing in ourselves, creating a more sustainable mass transit, clean water, we're talking about clean water, is that something that we shouldn't be investing into? It's ridiculous, Tom. And I think everything in this infrastructure bill needs to go. I don't even think that should be a human right, clean water, let alone us debating whether or not we should create an infrastructure that offers clean water to the people in Detroit or wherever they're at. Mass transit, high-speed internet, clean energy, a thoughtful strategy to clean energy, if I could say that. The idea of clean energy, I'm 100% behind it. Nuclear, wind, solar, whatever we need to, but it needs to be a thoughtful approach, because there's a lot of people that work in the coal industry, that work in the natural, in the dirty, the non-clean energy, that have to have a thoughtful approach as we transition from dirty energy to clean energy. And I don't hear enough people talking about that long-term impact of that transition. The dignity of the decision-making needs to be at the front of the conversation. You know, we need to get here. That's what leaders do, right? This is where we need to go. Clean energy, sustainable grids. I mean, look what happened in Texas. All of that is where we need to go. We should only be discussing how do we get there, maintain dignity for the people that are going to be displaced. How do we retrain? How do we be more inclusive? How do we build a middle class, a working class that can really live what our parents were able to live, and that American dream? I think when you talked earlier, what's the Democrats up to, Tom? I think you made that comment. What's the game plan? And just listening to us talk today and doing a little bit of prep for the show, you look at the infrastructure, you look at the PRO Act, you look at protecting a strategy for pensions for people that created the environment that we have. Just those three pieces alone are going to build a better America and create an environment that my kids are going to have the opportunity to succeed in.
So Rick Unger, what are you hearing on your show?
Oh, there's so much going on. You know,
and we should, by the way, if I could, real quick.
Yeah.
To the point that John made, the Biden administration is not calling this the infrastructure bill anymore. They're calling it the National Jobs Plan.
That's right.
And the Jobs Act, which I think is absolutely brilliant branding. But
Yes.
back
Well,
to you.
there's you know, each and every one of you has made terrific points on this. I want to throw one more into it. What makes this infrastructure discussion so interesting? I mean, let's face it, you know, each and every one of you have a reason to be concerned about infrastructure bills, but your average American doesn't pay that much attention. The Biden administration did something here that I consider to be so awesome. You know, I feel sometimes like I'm hyping for the Biden administration, but when was the last time you saw an administration or anybody in government consider human infrastructure? And that's what this is all about. I got to tell you, if we were going to limit this conversation to physical infrastructure, I think you would find that the Republicans and the Democrats aren't that far off. They would argue over a few bucks here and a few bucks there. What this argument is really about is the inclusion of human infrastructure, building senior centers for our older people, coming up with a better system so that people who are getting old can get health care in their houses, better taking care of disabled people in America. This is all included in infrastructure, and I would say that is exactly where it belongs. And so good for Biden for doing that. And I think it's going to blow back on the Republicans, and this is what they're primarily fighting over. In terms of one thing I will pass along, Tom, that I am hearing, we are likely going to see a move to include the PRO Act into the infrastructure bill. A lot of the thinking is starting to turn towards, no matter how much the administration wants to try and make this bipartisan, it's not going to be bipartisan. And if we're going to have to pass the infrastructure bill by reconciliation, so we can do it with the 50 Democratic votes and the vice president, why not put the PRO Act into the American Jobs Bill and pass that at the same time by reconciliation?
But Rick, the whole point of reconciliation is that a piece of law has to affect basically the budget. You know, money coming in, money going out of the federal government. The PRO Act, I don't see how that does that. What am I missing?
It will be tough to get it through the parliamentarian, but I actually spent some time on it because I had the same question. And there are some ways you could possibly do it. I certainly couldn't sit here and predict that it's going to happen, but there are some ways you can attach elements, at least elements of the PRO Act to the federal budget. So we'll see, but I think that's a piece of info that I got that I pass along to everybody. There may be that effort.
I remember 4 or 5 years ago watching a Bloomberg News show, and they had a Chinese fellow representing the Chinese government on, and he was being interviewed by some guy out of wherever, Singapore or something. And he made the comment that really stuck with me. He said, he was talking about how they were, you know, there are now more people in China, more people going to college in China than anywhere in the world. And that their middle class now is larger than the entire population of the United States. And that entire middle class has access to free college. And he made the comment that we believe that our people going to school represents intellectual infrastructure. And intellectual infrastructure is among the most important of all the forms of infrastructure there are.
Absolutely right.
Is that speaking to your point, Rick?
I think it speaks beautifully to the point that I'm making. And it's about time we came to understand that. And by the way, a lot of the money in the infrastructure bill is to build new schools that actually can function for people in this country. It's, you know, I don't want to oversell it, but I think people are underselling it. The willingness of the Biden administration to take this step in the very simple definition of what infrastructure is, I just think it's one of the more important things I've seen in years. I don't know how well it's going to work. I don't know if we'll ever get Republicans to adopt it. But the fact of the matter is, and what the Chinese representative said, what a great way to put it. Of course, it's infrastructure.
Yeah.
I'll jump in real quick. You know, what I said at the top of the segment was exactly that.
Cook.
Yeah, yes, Mike Cook, with investing in you know, our vertical construction, to take our resources and put them into housing developments and help, obviously, you know, help our veterans, help our elderly. All those things that we can do are so important. And I'll just add with this one little tidbit. I mean, you look at a little bit of a different angle. You take a ship that was stuck in the Suez Canal, and all of a sudden we're shut down because of one boat that went sideways. Investing, you know, and back into ourselves again. You know, bring back some of these functions that we did, you know, as a country decades ago that we outsourced to other countries. And here one boat gets stuck in here, and we're sitting waiting for, you know, chips so we can drive a car. So
it's a great example.
Yeah, it just sort of radiates with me in the totality of it, of the infrastructure bill, but as a personal note that, yeah, we need to bring this stuff back to this country.
Yeah, amen. Well said, Mike, and Rick and John and Lou and Bert. I appreciate all of you. I'm going to call for a break right here. It is 29 minutes and change past the hour. It'll be 30 minutes past the hour in about 10 seconds. And so we're going to take a break here at WCPT on our labor panel. And we will continue with this conversation with Rick Unger and I co-hosting with John Daniel, business manager, Smart Local 265 Sheet Metal Workers, Lou Cairo, senior partner with GWC Injury Lawyers, Mike Cook, service director with Painters Council District 14, finishing in Chicago, Burt Walters, Elbert Walters III, director of Powering Chicago, and also with a little help from the operating engineers 399, for which we're very grateful. So we'll be right back.
You're listening to WCPT 820. Here's the latest Chicago traffic update.
I'll be right back.
Headed in on the Edens, bumper to bumper, Glenview down to the Kennedy merge. Lake Oak Road to the junction, 4317 on the flip. Now the Kennedy outbound, slammed out to Harlem. 43 just at the split, 28 in the express, hour 4 out to O'Hare. Inbound from O'Hare at 50 minutes, 18 of that inbound off the junction. Now on the Ike outbound, bumper to bumper out to Des Plaines Avenue. From the Circle out to 390 and 49. Inbound now up to an hour and 3. Stevenson inbound, loaded up from Lamont into Cass Avenue with a crash. 355 into the drive at 49. Outbound, solid from the Ryan out to Central. Lakeshore Drive out to 355. That's an hour and 12. The Ryan inbound, a parking lot from Pershing to the Burn. 95th on in at a half hour. 24 in the flip. That's traffic. I'm Mary DeBadges.
Really hear you because the
victims of
the radio is very loud.
driving.
All right, let me get my mic up a little bit closer.
There you go.
There's a lot of interesting comments. The things like FMLA, day of rest, and 7, LM reports, grievance receipts, labor books, union bylaws, education oversight of business managers.
Somebody's taking notes.
It's pretty.
That's gonna have to go to a future one.
Yeah, that's too much to unpack in this call. But
Calling you out, John. Oversight of business managers.
Yeah.
Actually, we can just get a lecture going with Mike and John here.
Yeah. Actually,
a lecture series.
Yeah.
Well, we're not back, right?
And we're back.
No, we're not back.
Emu and Doug for the final question. Category is.
So I'm figuring,
All right,
Bert, this is really your wheelhouse here.
Liberty Mutual customizes your car insurance so you only pay for what you need.
Interpreting the notes here correctly. So I'm going to start this and toss it to you. Is that all right?
Only pay for what you need.
Bert, yeah, that's fine. I can go over some things, and I want to make sure that I cover a lot of it.
Wayne's CPA went MIA.
Things of that nature. So
To keep his books
That's
and
fine.
his
Take all the time you
injury,
want.
he needs to find a replacement.
Yeah. Or at least he gave you a heads up. He threw me right to the wolves in the beginning.
Listen, that's okay. I saw the way that Lou was doing as a floundering flounder, and I said, you know what, I'm following his lead.
Hey, just make stuff up, dude.
Yeah,
ready for that one.
No one's ever going to know.
Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Is the next segment going to be pretty much followed up on
WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome back to WCPT 820's virtual labor panel, sponsored by Smart Local 265, Finishing Chicago, GWC Injury Lawyers, Powering Chicago, and Operating Engineers Local 399.
And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and along with Rick Unger, co-hosting and our esteemed group of panelists, Elbert Walters III, the Director of Powering Chicago, Mike Cook, the Service Director of Painters District Council 14, Finishing Chicago, Lou Cairo, the Senior Partner with GWC Injury Lawyers, and John Daniel, the Business Manager over at Smart Local 265, the Sheet Metal Workers. And segueing out of this conversation about infrastructure and which I thought was absolutely fascinating and moving, we're watching in real time, basically words, terms, concepts being redefined for the 21st century. And I think it's just a marvelous, marvelous thing. And one of the things that really excites me about the possibility of this infrastructure bill is that, about half of our, if my recollection is correct, about half of the poison coming out of our tailpipes, or half of the greenhouse gases that we're producing in this country are coming out of transportation. It's not all cars, but a good chunk of it is cars. And there is a solution. I've been driving a plug-in hybrid for 4 years now, and in those 4 years, I've bought 3 tanks of gas. The only time I'm not running on electricity is if I have to drive more than 40 miles away from here. And, the next car I buy is going to be 100% electric. In fact, we tossed up a poll asking people during the break, and 60% of people said my next car will be an electric vehicle. Bert Walters, this is in your wheelhouse. Tell us your thoughts on what this means in this bill. There's really kind of 2 large categories that I'd love for you to riff on. Number one, just what that transition from fossil fuel internal combustion, from vehicles that are being driven by thousands of little explosions every minute, producing enormous amounts of waste heat and poison that we know is causing at least 10, 20,000 cancers a year and fouling our air and and ruining our climate, to something that is producing no emissions, something that is very clean. So what? Talk about that, and then also how that all ties into this infrastructure legislation. What do we need to do to get there?
Well, first of all, I appreciate it, and I want to go back, and I think you said something really, really key, and that is the fact that we've been seeing cleaner skies as an effect of COVID, and that is because of the fact that we've slowed down our traveling, right? And especially in the big inner cities and the metropolitan areas, we've seen cleaner skies, healthier breathing, and I think part of that is kind of what opened a few people's eyes of what we're actually doing to the atmosphere. As far as what this particular bill does for us, I want to make sure that we explain a couple of things, because there's been some conversations about what is, everyone knows that the electrical vehicles are here, but when it comes to putting together this infrastructure, right, we wanted to make sure that, there's a clear and concise understanding about what that really means. And part of that legislation that was coming together was this word or phrase, Evitp, right? And what does that actually mean? So I want to make sure that I cover a little bit of that before we get into the real effect of what we've been doing here in Chicago and what we've been seeing here in Chicago as it relates to our relationship with changing that infrastructure. So EVIT stands for the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Training Program, right? So this program was basically birthed at the University of Michigan back in 2012. And this program sets the nationwide standard for electrical vehicle service installations. What that basically means is that, of course, the way that electrical work is done here in Chicago will be the same that it's done in New York, will be the same that it's done all across the nation. And that will basically ensure a reliable infrastructure no matter where you go when you go to plug up your vehicle, right? When you go to charge your vehicle. This program seeks to address some of the major issues that can come from having different people do different works from different areas. And it basically addresses the technical requirements, the safety essentials, meaning how safe is this for people to interact with this particular equipment, the integrity, and actually making sure that the stakeholders and partners can depend on a reliable infrastructure as a whole. Some people ask, well, how did this group start, or what is this, right? What is the EVITP? Well, it's basically a group comprised of all of the industry partners, right? Those who would have a stake in making sure that the infrastructure is safe. And that includes automobile manufacturers, it includes battery makers, it includes investors in owned and basically public utilities. It includes the state and local electrical inspectors and first responders, right? So all of these entities have a stake in making sure that the vehicles that we're driving are not only, electrical vehicles are performing as they should, but that when we go to utilize the interface equipment, that it's operating properly. And so these partners and stakeholders came together to establish this non-for-profit, brand neutral, volunteer-based national vehicle industry collective. And what that means is that it is not just one individual. We spoke about the power of collaboration earlier, right? Making sure that you have management and labor on the same side going to a collective goal. This is the exact same concept. You're getting all of the stakeholders together, making sure that they have one set standards so that there are not different standards all across. Some people ask, well, what does it take to be an EVITP certified individual? Well, right now, you just have to be a certified electrician or licensed electrician, or you have to serve a Department of Labor documented and accredited apprenticeship, about 8,000 hours worth of training. And that's important because we talked about, and I wrote this down because I wanted to make sure that I incorporate this in the language, investing in human infrastructure, right? Part of this is making sure that we continue to train and develop our workforce. One of the things I'm so proud of as far as Powering Chicago and its partners is that we consistently invest and deliberately invest in our members. We invest in our apprenticeship program, making sure that we're on the cutting edge. As a matter of fact, we've been investing in renewable energy resources for about 20 years now. If you go to our campus in Alsip, typically you'll see first the big wind tower, right? But if you actually go onto the campus, you'll see fixed and trackable solar arrays. You'll also see a carport, right, that is actually supplying power to a couple of electrical vehicle supply equipment, which is basically the charging stations. And this is what our members, our journey persons, and our apprentices have access to. Again, making sure that we invest in them to make sure that they are equipped to handle what tomorrow will ask for and what tomorrow will bring. And for Powering Chicago, making sure that this investment is not only just from the contractor side, but that it's from both partners, meaning the actual union members, we continue to invest in one another, and from the partners. Why is this so important? Well, the importance cannot be understated that there's a need for uniform standards, as I said before. It has to be dependable for the distribution of electrical vehicles. And where Powering Chicago comes in is the fact that NECA and IBW as a whole provide the training that is unparalleled, that we continue to invest in training, and we can boldly claim, and I'm proud to say that we're at the top tier as far as training. And the fact that President Biden called out our partners as key players in making sure that this infrastructure in place, I think is amazing. When we look at what we're doing here locally, we have seen the city make huge efforts in trying to make an impact on cutting down on some of the emissions. One of the initiatives that they had was to change their bus routes to an electric bus route. Powering Chicago members were part of changing that initiative. As a matter of fact, we have routes running right now in Chicago Avenue, which again is in a typically underserved community running along Chicago Avenue, where most of that community was affected by disinvestment. It was affected by greenhouse pollutions, gas pollutions, and actually the second bus route was at Navy Pier. And so because the city is looking at this and they're looking to move forward, for me, I am very proud of the fact that they knew who to go to, because not only are we familiar with the new technology and implementing and supplementing this technology and having the education resources to make sure that it is done right and done on time every time, but the fact that we are familiar with the infrastructure that is the city. We've been here for over 100 years, and we're familiar with the city and what it does and the electrical resources that it has.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Bert, can you speak briefly to just specifically electric vehicles and electric cars? I think President Biden the other day, when he was talking about this new Ford F-150, all electric Ford F-150, he said words to the effect of, this thing can really go fast. That's been my experience of electric vehicles. How do we awaken America to the extraordinary potential here? It seems like maybe one of the best ways is just through what Joe Biden was doing, which is basically saying, "Hey, toys for boys and girls." These are just great things. I mean, it's a new way of transportation that actually works better.
Yeah, well, for me and for Powering Chicago, I think the best thing to go about as far as getting our people more aware of and involved in electrical vehicles is to actually see them in action. Of course, when Tesla vehicles first came out, I was very excited about the potential, right? But again, not knowing and seeing this new technology, not knowing exactly what it would bring, I think was one of the aspects that kind of deterred me from, and probably most people from, in the price point, from actually attaining some of these vehicles. And that plays a role. The fact that the F-150 is probably one of the most popular vehicles in America. The fact that the price point will be one is though that most people can afford it, I think will further translate to you seeing more electrical vehicles, on the roads, and in front of people's houses and people acquiring them. But I think the main thing is, accessibility to charging locations. We've been very active in trying to make sure that the infrastructure is installed correctly and installed properly. And what we have been seeing is that there are individuals who want to install this equipment in what we call electrical vehicle deserts or charging deserts, right? That's part of the issue as far as making sure that individuals get access to these vehicles. If we look at, for instance, the west side of Chicago, how difficult is it for them to get to a situation where they can charge their vehicle if they have no charging stations? And that means investing in the infrastructure, right? Also, it's about exposure, right? When we look at making sure that individuals of color in disinvested and underserved communities have access to this technology, then it further piques their interest and encourages their investment. What we've seen is with, one of our Powering Chicago partners has partnered with neighboring high schools, right? And developing programs through their renewable energy program, right? And this has actually created not only an interest in the renewable energy resources as far as solar energy, but again, they're looking to develop elements of this program into those high schools. We've seen that there's an interest inside, right? As far as the young people are concerned, to take advantage of this. But I think the big key is making sure that the infrastructure is there, that the infrastructure is reliable, and that we partner with our city, local community governments, and communities in making sure that they are aware of this technology, they take advantage of this technology, and again, the investment will be there.
Yeah, it's solid. Thank you, Bert. Mike Cook, I'm curious. You're finishing Chicago, the Painters District Council 14. How does the electrification of our transportation systems affect you guys personally or professionally?
Well, let's just say personally. As far as the painters, I don't know how that would come into play, and even with the glazing aspect as far as electric vehicles. But personally, I still have a heart for a large, big block Ford, Chevy, or Dodge thundering V8. When I step on the gas, I want to hear that baby go. One thing that electric vehicles doesn't offer you is that thrill, because when you step on the accelerator, you just go from 0 to 60 in about 3.6 seconds, and you do get pinned back into the seat. But I do have a place for some old school, muscle
noise.
cars. Yeah, without a doubt. So with that, I think I'm going to invent an app that you can put on your phone. So anybody that's in an electric car, when you step on the accelerator, it will sound like a big block Ford 429.
Electric cars actually have noise making devices in them. When you hear an electric car go by and you hear this, that's not actually the sound of the motor. There's a little device in there. Say what?
It's just not the same.
Yeah, I know, I get that. But maybe they
Tom, can you do that again, please?
Yeah. Say it again?
Tom, can you make that noise again, please?
No, I can't, Luke.
I thought a Tesla just went by my front door.
But basically, that's the reason they do that is so that people don't get snuck up on and hit. This is a problem that they had with the early hybrid cars when they were running all electric, and you'd be in a parking lot and you come up on somebody and they had no idea you're there, and they walk out in front of you and bang, you've got an accident. And so they're now making a noise. Well, maybe, Mike, they could just replace that little noisemaker instead of going with something.
Right. We can have a full exhaust. One thing I will say to add to Bert's comment is I was always concerned as to how we would have an infrastructure that would be able to supply, because let's face it, you have to have electricity to charge batteries. And I know that like Tesla has a regenerative I think like features in it, and I believe that I think when the car is stopping, it actually helps regenerate the batteries a little bit. So I know that technology is always up and coming, but you still need an infrastructure to supply the electricity to
Maybe.
charge
Maybe.
these.
I mean, here's what I've noticed. My car charges, I just off a regular wall outlet. Takes about 5 hours to charge it. It gives me a 40-mile range, and it uses an amount of electricity. It's like about a kilowatt, right? 1,000 watts. There are at least 10 light bulbs in this house that, when this house was built in 1980, were 100-watt bulbs, and today they're 8-watt bulbs because they're LED bulbs.
Absolutely.
So the amount of electricity that my house is using, including charging my car every day, is still probably less than what the house was designed for.
Than those 10 light bulbs or your hair dryer, Tom.
Yeah. Well, the hairdryer actually uses more power than the car does, and I don't think people get that. People think, oh, I buy an electric car, I'm going to have to rewire my house, and I'm going to have to do all those. No, I mean, it's you can go crazy if you want, but anyhow, I'm curious. Lou and John, you guys haven't chimed in on any of this stuff. Lou, you want to toss some thoughts in here?
Yeah, currently right now there's, I think there's 41,000 charging stations across the United States of America. This $174 billion proposal for the American Jobs Plan would create 500,000 new electric charging stations across America. So we go from 41,000 to 541,000, which is huge. That's a lot of charging stations that'll be made in America, God willing, union workers. That's people that are going to be bringing electricity from the main source by a building somewhere, bringing it out to where the charging station is going to be mounted, and cement masons, creating the concrete pad to mount those in. There's a lot of, there's a lot of give back there. There's a lot of that money that's not just going into a charger. It's the people, the manpower to put those things, to build those, to deliver them, to bring them from the factories to the locations in the electrical desert that I think Mike referred to. So I think it's very, very important to know where the money is being spent. There's a lot of money involved in here for rebates to consumers, which $100 billion of the $174 billion proposal is for rebates, giving consumers rebates. So if you buy an electric vehicle, you get a rebate, I assume it would be against your taxes or something. Incentivizing consumers to buy an electric vehicle, which is also, again, you're taking money, you're putting it back into the economy, and you're saving. Everybody wants their stimulus check, right? I'm dying to get my $1,200 stimulus check or whatever the heck they are. I've never seen one before. But if you knew you could go buy an energy efficient electric car that's creating jobs, and you can get that, your $1,000, whatever it's going to be, as a rebate, again, you're saving money for the people in the economy who are helping the economy grow by buying the electrical vehicles, who are helping that we need with these charging stations. So it's a big circle of life, so to speak. So it's obviously a great proposal. It helps everybody. And with respect to like Mike's comment, I have a Ford F-150 Raptor, and it sounds amazing when you jump on it. But I'm going to buy that electric one, because as fast as my F-150 Raptor is, the electric one is even quicker. And I'm going to get a charging station. I'm not going to probably get a rebate incentive from the government, but I'm going to do it because it's the right thing. And I'm tired of going to the gas station, because that Raptor is a pig on gas.
As long as you have one of our members install the charging station for you at your home,
You got it, baby. Not an issue. 134 have been very good to me.
Well done, Bert. Well done. John, your thoughts? John Daniels with the sheet metal workers. Are you guys going to be involved in the charging stations?
I don't know about the charging stations, but the manufacturing of these electric buses, the manufacturing, the facilities where these Tesla batteries have been built, it creates a lot of construction work. And we're talking about electric stuff. I got to give a shout out to one of my partners in the industry. It's a business manager of Smart Local 105, Luther Medina. Luther represents 350 smart members that work at BYD, electric bus manufacturing in Lancaster, California. So just give a shout out to those members. I know COVID's hit you hard. I think at the peak, you guys were up around 800 members working at the facility. COVID's put you back to 350. Hopefully we're seeing that turn around and seeing that workforce come back. But collectively, I'm all in. Electric cars, batteries, infrastructure, the PRO Act, the pension restructuring to support the people that were before us. I just think all of that needs to happen thoughtfully. I think the conversation with dignity in a corporate strategy, I think the employees being represented by a union in that conversation not only makes a better product, it makes a better society. And collectively, if we keep having these type of conversations and more people get engaged and support candidates like our current president, Joe Biden, I think we'll wake up in a much better place than we find ourselves today. And anyone that's out there listening, one more shameless plug, if you're interested in anything that we've talked about or I've talked about, or you're just curious about how to join a union, our international's website is smart-union. You'll see on the right-hand side, there's a tab that says Join Us, and you can get all kinds of information about how to join our international. I'm out of Illinois, just outside the Chicagoland area, but we're smart265.org. You can click on my name to email me directly if you got questions, but across the country, if you go to smart-union.org, join us, you can learn more about us. I tell you, join a union. The union has brought me and my family and a lot of people before me to where I am today. So I appreciate the opportunity to tell a little bit of our story today.
Bert, how do people find out more about Powering Chicago?
Yes, well, I appreciate that, Tom. You can visit poweringchicago.com. You can email me at ewalters@poweringchicago.com, or you can follow me on LinkedIn, same name.
That's great. And Mike Cook, you want to tell us how to find out more about it?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Yeah, more information at paintersistercouncil14.com. The website is loaded with obviously tips for our apprenticeship program, everything that we do for the painters, glazers, drywall finishers, sign painters, metal polishers, all the trades that we cover. Or you can email me at mikecook@pdc14.com.
And Lou?
We're easy to find on the web. If you look at my shirt here, GWC, for GWC Injury Law Firm in Chicago, it's just GWC. If you put that in, GWC.com, GWC Law, you'll find us. And my email address is lcairo@gwclaw.com. And Tom and Rick, how do we find you gentlemen if somebody wants to talk to you or buy one of Tom's beautiful books?
Yeah, ThomHartmann.com. However you spell it, it'll get you there. Rick, we have about a minute and a half to go. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm gonna, first of all, you can reach me at Rick Unger, RICKUNGAR. I want to pick up on what Lou was talking about because I was very much in agreement with him. The inclusion in the Jobs Act, the infrastructure bill, to expand electric vehicles and battery making is extraordinary, very important. I just want to sound one caution. We've already seen General Motors take one of their plants in Mexico to convert it to an electric vehicle plant. Ford's talking about it. Any money that our government gives for this development has to have that one string attached. It has to stay right here in the United States.
Absolutely.
Plan. That definitely sounds like a plan. Anybody have any thoughts on the? We have 40 seconds here on how this is going to pass.
Oh well, we can figure that out in 40 seconds, right?
Well, I think they've already gotten approval from the parliamentarian on reconciliation on this. Am I wrong, Rick?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they have. I don't think they've sought it yet, to be honest.
Okay. Well, yeah, the entire bill isn't together.
But I as long as we're getting to that part, I would just also throw this in. Nobody should be fooled by this counteroffer that's come today, or will be announced tomorrow by the Republicans, the $1 trillion counteroffer, because $700,000 of it is money that was already allocated but not yet spent for a purpose for COVID relief.
$700 billion. Thank you all for being with us.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Tom.
Good to be with you guys.
Thanks, Tom.
The history of Air America lives here. This is WCPT 820.
Well, everybody survived.
Yeah.
And did a wonderful job. Did Cairo leave already?
Yeah, he did. I just looking where he was, Mike Cook now is.
Yeah.
He's got to go sell another house.